They served champagne in the good glasses that night, the ones my mother-in-law left us when she died, thin crystal that sang if you ran a wet finger around the rim. I remember the way the light from the chandelier broke apart inside those glasses and scattered across the tablecloth like something spilled. 25 years. There was a banner. My husband had it printed in gold script, Grant and Delia, a quarter-century of love, and it hung above the mantel of a house I had paid for with money that was not, strictly speaking, ours. 60 guests. A caterer. A three-piece string ensemble in the corner playing the kind of music that makes people feel tender toward one another. Grant had thought of everything. That was the thing people always said about him. Grant thinks of everything. They had no idea how true it was. My name is Delia Marsh. I was 48 years old that night, and I have spent my entire adult life reading the human mouth. I am a certified sign language interpreter and a forensic lip-reading specialist, which is a fancy way of saying that courts pay me to tell them what a face said when there was no sound to prove it.
Silent surveillance footage.
A defendant caught on a bank camera. A witness across a parking lot. I read lips the way other people read a page, and I have done it so long that I cannot turn it off any more than you can choose not to understand English when someone speaks it near you. I sit in restaurants and I know that the couple 3 tables over is fighting about money, not the affair they think they are fighting about.
It is not a gift.
Most of the time it is a small, sad burden, knowing more than you want to know about strangers. That night it stopped being small. My father had died in March. He left me the farm, 412 acres of good bottomland outside Cedar Hollow, the house he was born in, and the accounts he had spent 79 careful years filling. He left it to me, not to Grant. Me, by name, in a will his lawyer had read aloud in a wood-paneled office, while I sat with my hands folded and Grant sat beside me doing arithmetic behind his eyes. I saw him do it. I saw the numbers move across his face. I told myself I was imagining things. A wife tells herself that for a long time before she stops. So there we were. Grant stood, and he tapped his glass with a butter knife, and the room went soft and quiet. He is a handsome man, my husband. Silver at the temples, a jaw like a magazine, a voice that carries without shouting. He talked about how he met me at a courthouse. True. How I had translated for a deaf plaintiff and he had watched my hands and fallen in love with the way I made silence speak. People made the ah sound. And then his voice changed. It dropped into something gentle and grave. These last months, he said, have not been easy for us. Delia lost her father, and grief takes a toll. Some of you have noticed she's not quite herself. She forgets things. She gets turned around. And I want to say publicly, in front of everyone who loves her, that I will be there for every step of what's coming. In sickness and in health. Whatever she needs. Whatever this becomes. He looked at me with his eyes shining, and he raised his glass and he said, "To my fragile, beautiful wife, who needs looking after now, and who will have it." The room applauded. 60 faces turned to me full of pity. Someone squeezed my shoulder. A woman near the piano actually dabbed at her eyes. And I stood there in my navy dress, and I smiled the smile I had spent a lifetime learning, the professional smile you wear when the courtroom is watching, and I understood the way you understand a stare that isn't there, that my husband had just told 60 witnesses. I was losing my mind. Then, he stepped back from the microphone. He crossed to the far side of the room where the caterers had set up a bar, and Sylvie was there.
Sylvie.
His assistant. 29, a curtain of dark hair, a laugh I had heard too many times on speakerphone. She had come to the party alone, and Grant had said she was practically family. He stood close to her by the bar, and he lifted his glass and touched it to hers, and he leaned in, and thinking no one could hear, because no one could hear, the string trio was playing and the room was loud with love, he said something to her. I was fully 3 meters away. 10 feet. There were 2 people and a floral arrangement between us. And I read his mouth the way I would read a headline. "A few more months," he said. "The medical file's almost thick enough. By Christmas the court declares her incompetent, I get conservatorship, and the whole estate, the farm, all of it, comes to me. Then it's just us. Just be patient, baby. By Christmas, *. Sylvie glanced across the room at me, and I was already looking away, already lifting my own glass, already laughing at something the man beside me had said, because 48 years of my life had prepared me for exactly one thing, and that was to keep my face still while my mind fell down a well. I did not gasp. I did not drop the glass. I want you to understand that this is the single most important thing I did that whole night. I did nothing. Because the moment I let my face change, I lost. He would know I knew. And a man who has spent half a year building a case that his wife is insane will move fast when he realizes his wife is not. Instead, I reached into my handbag, which sat open on the chair beside me, and I found my phone by feel, the way you find a light switch in the dark of a house you've lived in for decades, and I pressed the button on the side twice, which is the shortcut I had set to open the camera. And I turned the bag just slightly so the lens cleared the leather rim. I did not look down. I kept my eyes on the man telling me about his boat while I aimed a phone by muscle memory at my husband and the girl by the bar, and I let it record. I got 40 seconds. Grant's mouth. Sylvie's mouth. Enough. And then, standing in the middle of my own anniversary party, holding a glass that sang, I did the arithmetic myself. 6 months of arithmetic, all at once. The car keys that vanished from the hook by the door and turned up in the freezer, in the toe of a boot, in the pocket of a coat I hadn't worn since winter. I had blamed myself. Grant had watched me search with such patient concern. The way my reading glasses were never where I left them. The way Grant had started saying, at dinners at Nora's on Sundays, * tell them what happened Tuesday. Honey, no? You don't remember? See, this is what I mean. * the way our old friends had begun to look at me with a new softness, a leaning in, a careful slowness, as though I might spook. And the pills. God, the pills. 3 weeks earlier, Grant had come home with an amber bottle and said the new doctor wanted me on something for the anxiety, for the grief, one every night, and he had stood in the bathroom doorway while I took it, and every night after taking it I slept like something drowned and woke with my head full of wet wool and could not have told you what day it was. I had thought I was breaking. I was being broken. On purpose. By the man who had just toasted me. I want to tell you I felt rage. I did, eventually, but not that night. That night what I felt was the strangest clarity I have ever known, a cold, wide, floodlit clarity, because for 6 months I had been afraid of the thing happening inside my own skull, and now I knew the thing was not inside my skull at all.
It was outside me.
It had a face. It had a jaw like a magazine, and it was smiling at our guests.
I was not sick.
I was being robbed. And a robbery, unlike a disease, is a thing you can fight. I let the party end. I thanked people for coming. I let Grant put his hand on the small of my back and steer me and say, "You did great tonight. You weren't confused at all," in the tone you'd use with a child who managed not to wet the bed. I let him think it worked. When we got upstairs, he handed me the amber bottle and a glass of water, and I took the pill into my mouth and drank and said goodnight. And when he turned to brush his teeth, I moved the pill from under my tongue into my palm, and later, in the dark, I dropped it into the little brass compact that had been my mother's, the one with the powder puff, and I closed it with a click he never heard over his own breathing. That was the first one. Over the next 2 weeks, there were 11 more. I built a small evidence locker inside a powder compact.
Now.
I need you to understand who I am so you understand what happened next, because a frightened woman runs, and I have watched too many frightened people fall apart on witness stands to fall apart myself. I am not brave. I am methodical. Bravery is loud and burns out. Method is quiet and it wins. I decided that night, lying beside a man I had loved for 25 years and now understood the way you understand a diagnosis, that I would not confront him. I would not scream. I would not flee to a hotel and hire the first lawyer in the phone book. I would build the same kind of case against him that he was building against me. Except mine would be true. The next morning I started mapping it. I got a spiral notebook, the cheap kind, and I began writing down every strange thing from the past 6 months with a date beside it, or my best guess at a date.
The keys.
The glasses. The dinner where he told the Hendersons I'd gotten lost driving home from a road I had driven for 20 years. I wrote it all in the small, careful hand I use for interpretation notes, and I hid the notebook inside the lining of a suitcase in the attic, in a house where my husband believed I could no longer remember where I kept things. And then I started to act. Because if he was watching me for confusion, I would give him confusion. I would give him a woman getting worse. That way he would relax. That way he would move slower, or when I needed him to, faster. I forgot where the coffee filters were and let him find them for me. I called him at work to ask a question I'd already asked. I let him catch me standing in the pantry looking lost. Each time, I watched his face, and each time I saw the thing I needed to see, satisfaction. My husband was pleased when he thought my mind was dissolving. You learn a lot about a marriage from watching a man be pleased by that. But I knew, because I have sat in 1,000 courtrooms, that a phone video of a man whispering at a party was not going to save me. A good defense attorney would shred it. Asterisk lip reading is subjective. My client was quoting a movie. The angle is bad. Where's the audio? Asterisk I needed the video authenticated by someone with no stake in it, and I needed a physical chain, the pills, a witness, a paper trail, that could stand up on its own even if the video were thrown out entirely. I needed to build something a jury could hold in its hands. So I called Marcus. Marcus Bell is another forensic lip reader, one of maybe 200 in the country certified to testify. We had worked opposite each other on a homicide case years back and respected each other the way you respect someone who does the same impossible job you do. I drove 40 minutes to his office, and I did not tell him what was on the video. That was deliberate. I said only, I need a blind read. I need you to tell me what these two mouths are saying, and I need you to not know what I think they're saying, so your read is clean. He raised an eyebrow, but he understood. A blind read is worth 10 times a coached one. He put on his glasses, and he watched my 40 seconds 4 times, slowing it down, and he wrote on a legal pad, and then he turned the pad around. A few more months. The medical file's almost thick enough. By Christmas the court declares her incompetent. I get conservatorship, and the whole estate comes to me. Then it's just us. Be patient, baby. Asterisk. Word for word. 2 experts, no collusion, the same reading. I felt something go steady in my chest. Marcus signed and dated his transcription and had his office manager notarize it while I sat there. Then he took his glasses off and looked at me for a long moment and said quietly, Delia, whose mouth is that? My husband's, I said. He was silent. Then, this alone won't do it. You know that. A video with no sound, a lip read, however good. A judge will call it prejudicial and keep it out, or let it in, and let the defense make us look like carnival mind readers. You need the rest. You need whatever he's actually doing to leave a mark somewhere that isn't your eyes. I know, I said. There are pills. Then get the pills tested. Get the pharmacy. Get a doctor. Build me a spine to hang this on. He walked me to my car. And, Delia, cloud back up that video tonight. 2 places. Because if this man is what you say, the first thing he'll do when he suspects you is go for your phone. I thought that was paranoid. I did it anyway. That night I uploaded the file to my cloud account and I emailed a copy to Marcus and I emailed a copy to a private account of my own that Grant did not know existed. 3 places. Remember that. It mattered more than almost anything. My daughter came home that weekend. Nora is 24, our only child, and I love her with the particular helpless fury you feel for a person you made. She had driven 3 hours and she hugged me too long at the door, and I knew before she let go that Grant had gotten to her. He'd been calling her. Asterisk your mother left the stove on. Your mother got lost. Your mother's father dying really did a number on her, and I'm worried, and I don't know how much longer I can manage this alone. Asterisk, he built her fear the way he built everyone's. She was so gentle with me it broke my heart. Mom, she said Sunday morning, sitting on the edge of my bed like I was the child now. Will you go see someone? For me? Just to rule things out. Dad's really scared. Her eyes were wet. She meant it. That was the worst part. She was not cruel. She was frightened, and her fright had been manufactured by an expert. And at one point, when I let myself look genuinely lost searching for my own reading glasses, a performance, I want to be clear, a performance, I saw her lift her phone and quietly film me. Her hands were shaking. She was documenting her mother's decline for a father who had told her it was the loving thing to do. I nearly told her. The words were in my throat. Nora, your father is trying to steal my inheritance by having me declared insane, and you are helping him. But I looked at my daughter's frightened, loyal face, and I understood that if I told her now, she would not believe me. I had, after all, just performed confusion for her camera, and worse, she might go straight to Grant, out of love, to say Mom's saying crazy things about you. And that would end me. I swallowed the truth. It is the hardest thing I have ever swallowed. I let my daughter drive home, believing I was ill. Monday I took 2 of the pills from my mother's compact to the pharmacy on Prentice Street, the little independent one where I'd gotten my prescriptions for years, before Grant's new doctor. Rosa Delgado has been the pharmacist there for 2 decades. She knows my face. I told her I'd found some loose pills and wanted to know what they were, and I told her, watching her, that they'd been given to me as a mild anxiety medication one a night. Rosa turned one over in her gloved fingers and her mouth flattened. "This is not mild anything," she said. "This is a heavy-duty sedative hypnotic. Older patients on this, without careful monitoring, it can look exactly like dementia. Confusion, memory gaps, disorientation falls." She looked up. "Who prescribed this to you as mild?" "That's what I'm trying to find out," I said. "Would you pull my history?" "All of it." She went to her terminal, and her face changed in the way I'd been waiting, sick, to see it change. "Delia," she said slowly, "your file's been altered. Your regular script. You were on a low-dose antidepressant, right, from Dr. Awad. That was refilled in April, but the medication dispensed doesn't match. Someone changed the fill. And these pickups," she scrolled, "the last 3 months, they weren't picked up by you. There's a signature. A young woman. Dark hair. I remember her, actually, because she was in a hurry, and she didn't know your birthday when I asked to confirm. She had it written on her hand." Rosa looked at me. "That's not you. So who is it?" "A young woman. Dark hair, asterisk." "Can you print all of it?" I asked, and my voice was very steady, and inside me a name was ringing like a struck glass.
"Sylvie."
Rosa printed the dispensing history, every line, and she wrote and signed a statement describing the young woman who'd been collecting my sedatives, and she told me the store's security cameras kept 90 days of footage, and that if the police or a lawyer asked, it would still be there. I drove home with a folder in my passenger seat that was worth more than the farm. Then I called my brother. Peter is 6 years older than me, and he spent 30 years as an insurance fraud investigator before he retired to a lake house and a bass boat. He is the most suspicious man I have ever loved. I drove out to the lake, and I laid it all on his kitchen table. The notebook, the compact of pills, Rosa's printout, Marcus's notarized transcription, the video on my phone. I watched my brother, who does not rattle, go very still, and then very quiet, and then very cold. He watched the video 3 times. He read Marcus's transcription. He held one of the pills up to the light. "Okay," he said finally. "First, you don't confront him. You hear me? You do not tip him. Men doing this get dangerous when they think they've lost. Second, we find the doctor." "What doctor?" "He needs a psychiatrist," Peter said. "A conservatorship on cognitive grounds needs a physician's evaluation. He can't use your real doctor, Awad won't play. So he's got a friendly. Somebody he's paying, formally or not, to write that you're impaired, probably before they've even properly examined you. Find that appointment, and you've got him for conspiracy." Peter still had friends. It took him 9 days. He found the name in Grant's own calendar. Actually, Grant had a shared family calendar on his phone that synced to a tablet in the kitchen, and he'd been sloppy or arrogant, and there in early October, 3 weeks out, was an entry that just said D bring file. Peter, working other angles, matched the initial to a Dr. Roland Hantz, a psychiatrist across the county, with a suspended then reinstated license and a reputation, among the people Peter knew, for writing whatever paid. Peter found an email too, forwarded through a contact, in which Grant had asked Hantz whether a preliminary assessment based on collateral reports from family could be completed in advance of the formal exam to have the paperwork ready. Hantz had written back one line, "We can make that work." They were going to have the verdict written before the trial. That is what my marriage had become, a man commissioning my diagnosis, the way you'd commission a portrait. I set a small trap of my own. Now that I knew Grant needed the file thick enough by Christmas, I fed him thickness. I called him at work confused about our own address. I forgot our wedding anniversary was even a thing that had happened 2 weeks after the party, and let him gently, sadly remind me. I wanted him confident. I wanted him to feel the finish line. Because a confident man schedules the family meeting sooner, and I wanted this over before Christmas, on my terms, not his. And then he almost undid me. I got careless for 1 hour. 1 hour. I had left my phone on the nightstand while I showered, my phone with the video still on it, though I had backed it up 3 ways. Thank God. Thank Marcus. Grant had been growing suspicious. I'd overplayed the lucidity trap once at dinner, answered a question too sharply, seen his eyes narrow. That evening he went through my phone. I came out of the bathroom and found him sitting on the bed with it in his hand, and a look on his face I had never seen on my husband, a flat, reptile stillness, and I knew.
What is this? He said.
It was not a question. He turned the screen to me. It was open to my videos. And the party clip, the 40 seconds of his mouth and Sylvie's, was gone. He'd deleted it. You were filming me. At our anniversary. Filming me. He stood. He was between me and the door. Are you spying on your own husband, Delia? Does that sound like a well woman to you? Does that sound like someone competent?
Because it sounds paranoid to me.
Delusional. It sounds like exactly what the doctors are going to hear about. He stepped closer and dropped his voice to the register he used on the phone with Sylvie, soft and intimate and full of poison. Nobody is going to believe a confused old woman who thinks her devoted husband is out to get her. Nobody. You should be more careful with this thing. He set the phone down on the dresser, very gently, and he left the room, and I stood there dripping and shaking, and for about 90 seconds I believed I had lost everything. Then my mind came back online, because it always does, because that is the one thing about me he never understood. He had deleted the video off my phone, but I had it in 3 other places. He couldn't reach the cloud, or Marcus's inbox, or my secret account. He hadn't destroyed my evidence at all. He had only proven, out loud, in words, that he knew the video existed and that he wanted it gone, that a supposedly devoted husband caring for a supposedly sick wife had gone through her phone and deleted footage of himself. Innocent men do not delete evidence of their innocence. My husband, trying to disarm me, had handed me the thing prosecutors love best, consciousness of guilt. I wrote it all down that night. Every word he'd said in the attic notebook, dated, and I actually slept, for the first time in a week. 2 days later, Sylvie came to my door. I want to be honest about Sylvie, because I could make her a heroine and she was not one. She was standing on my porch on a Wednesday afternoon while Grant was at work, and she was white-faced and hollow-eyed, and she was not there to save me. She was there to save herself. I need to talk to you, she said.
Please.
Before it's too late. I let her into my kitchen. I made her tea because I am from Cedar Hollow, and we make tea for the woman sleeping with her husband if she shows up shaking. She wrapped her hands around the cup, and she told me things in a rush. That it had started as an affair 18 months ago, that she'd believed Grant when he said the marriage was already dead, that she hadn't known about the plan until this summer. And then, in August, Grant had asked her to start picking up my prescriptions to take the load off Delia, and it was months before she understood the pills she was collecting weren't the pills I was supposed to have. I looked it up, she whispered. What they were. And I realized what we were doing to you, what he was doing. And I got scared because if something happened to you, if you fell, she couldn't say it. I'd be part of it. I picked up the pills. My signature's on it. If you died, I'd go to prison and he'd walk, wouldn't he? He'd walk and I'd be the one. She started to cry, and it was not pretty. It was the ugly, terrified crying of someone who has finally understood the man she chose.
So no, she did not come out of love for me.
She came because she had done the same arithmetic I'd done at the party, and the numbers frightened her. But her fear was useful. She had things I needed. And I have learned not to demand that my rescuers be good. I only need them to be willing. She gave me her phone. She scrolled to a text thread with Grant, and there it was in blue and gray. Weeks of it. Asterisk, did you get the pills?
Yes.
Good. Make sure she takes them every night. Watch her. She seems really out of it lately. That's the point, sweetheart. Just a little longer. And, most damning, from Grant in September. Hans says if we get 2 more months of episodes documented plus the family statements, the evals airtight. Keep her foggy. Almost there, asterisk. I asked Sylvie to email me screenshots of the entire thread, right there on my kitchen table and to my own secret account, and she did, with her hands shaking, and then she told me one more thing, the thing I did not see coming. Your daughter knows, she said.
Nora.
She started to suspect him. A couple weeks ago she was here, and she found the pill bottle in your medicine cabinet, and something felt wrong to her, the way you'd been, so she took it. The Real bottle, the one that's actually filled at the house. She took it, and she's been holding on to it. She doesn't know what to do. She's scared she's wrong about her dad, and she's scared she's right. She asked me. She doesn't know about me and Grant. She just knows I work with him. She asked me if I'd noticed anything. Sylvie wiped her face. She loves you, Delia. She's just scared. I had to put my hand on the table. My daughter had not been betraying me. My daughter had been quietly gathering evidence of her own, alone, terrified, unsure, keeping the real bottle safe like a girl keeping a secret she was afraid to look at. She hadn't chosen him. She'd been suspended between us in the dark, and she'd grabbed the one solid thing she could. I told Sylvie to go home and act normal, and tell Grant nothing. I told her that if she testified when the time came, it would go easier for her than if she ran, and I watched her decide, in real time, whether to believe me. She left without deciding. That was fine. I had her screenshots either way. It moved fast after that, because Grant made it move fast. 3 days later he announced, over dinner, in the gentlest voice, that he'd arranged a family meeting for Saturday. Just people who love you, he said. Peter's coming.
Nora.
And Dr. Hans would like to sit in informally just to talk with you, no pressure, no exam, just a conversation. And my attorney, Ted, because there's some paperwork about the estate we should get in order while your head's clear, protect you, protect the farm. He reached across and took my hand. I'm doing this to take care of you, Delia. You know that. You believe that, don't you? I know you are, I said, and I let my eyes go a little vague, a little wet, a little grateful. I don't know what I'd do without you. He smiled. He had no idea. He had just scheduled his own hanging. I spent Friday preparing the way I prepare for court, because that is exactly what Saturday was going to be. I put everything on a laptop and a thumb drive and printed hard copies, 3 sets. The video, restored from the cloud, crisp and whole. Marcus's notarized transcription, and Marcus himself agreed to be on standby by phone. Rose's printout and her signed statement about the dark-haired young woman, plus the pharmacy's confirmation that the security footage still existed. Sylvie's text screenshots. Peter's findings on Dr. Hans, including Hans' own email. We can make that work. My attic notebook, the whole 6-month map. And I called Peter and told him not to walk in blind, to bring his own copy of everything, and to have the number for a detective he trusted already in his phone. Peter said, Delia. Just my name. Then, you did this. You built the whole thing yourself. Quiet, while he thought you were coming apart. I said, that's the only way I know how. He said, Dad would be proud, and I had to hang up before I lost my composure, and I do not lose my composure. Saturday came gray and cold, the first real cold of the year. Grant lit a fire in the living room, the room with the mantel where the anniversary banner had hung. He arranged the chairs. Dr. Hans arrived first, a soft, heavy man with a folder under his arm and the too warm handshake of someone selling something. Then Ted, the attorney, with a briefcase and a manila envelope I knew contained the power of attorney and conservatorship paperwork Grant wanted me to sign voluntarily, which is always cleaner than a fight. Then Nora, who hugged me and would not quite meet my eyes, and I saw how thin she'd gotten, how the last month had eaten at her. Then Peter, in a sport coat, carrying his own leather folio, calm as still water, who shook Grant's hand and said, Good to see you taking such good care of my sister, in a voice with a floor under it that only I could hear. They sat me in the center chair, the sick woman's chair, and they arranged themselves in a loose horseshoe of concern. Grant stood by the fire with his hand on the mantel and began. He was good. I'll give him that. He was so good it was almost worth watching as pure performance. He spoke about grief and about the tragedy of watching the woman you love slip away, about how hard it had been to carry this alone, about how he'd finally reached out to Dr. Hans because he couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. He talked about the stove, the keys, the getting lost, the paranoia. She started to think I'm against her, that people are conspiring against her, and I understand that's part of it. That's the illness, but it breaks my heart. He nodded to Hans, who opened his folder and cleared his throat and began to read from a preliminary assessment, based, he admitted when Peter asked mildly, on collateral information provided by the family, meaning Grant, meaning a document about my mind written by a man who had never examined my mind. Hans used the words significant cognitive impairment and diminished capacity and recommended a formal conservatorship. Ted slid the manila envelope across the coffee table toward me and uncapped a pen and set it on top, and Grant crouched down beside my chair and took my hand and said, so softly, so lovingly, "It's all right, sweetheart. We're all here. Just sign, and we'll take care of everything, and you don't have to worry about a single thing ever again." I looked at the pen. I looked at my husband's kind, false, handsome face. And I let the sick woman fall away like a coat sliding off my shoulders. "Before I sign anything," I said, in my courtroom voice, the one that fills a room without rising, "I'd like to show everyone something. It won't take long. Nora, honey, can you get the lights?" Nora, startled by a mother who suddenly sounded like a lawyer, got up and got the lights. I opened the laptop I had set beside my chair. The laptop Grant had been too busy performing to notice, and I turned it to face the room, and I pressed play. There we were. Our anniversary. The bar. Grant leaning into Sylvie. And I paused it on his face, on his mouth, and I said, "For those of you who don't know what I do for a living, the court does." I read lips professionally. "I've testified in this state 41 times. And 3 meters away, at our own party, while all of you were toasting my decline, my husband said this to his assistant." I let it play, his mouth moving in silence, and I read aloud, in time with him, the way I'd read 100 silent tapes for 100 juries. A few more months. The medical file's almost thick enough. By Christmas the court declares her incompetent. I get conservatorship, and the whole estate comes to me. Then it's just us. Be patient, baby. The room did not breathe. Grant stood up out of his crouch very slowly. That's absurd. You can't read. That's not. She's making that up. This is exactly the kind of paranoid. I thought you might say that, I said, and I turned to Ted, the attorney, because he was the only one in the room whose future depended on being honest. So, it wasn't only me who read it. I placed Marcus's notarized transcription on the coffee table. This is a blind read by another certified forensic lip reader. He didn't know whose mouth it was. He wrote down every word independently. It matches mine exactly. He's available by phone right now if you'd like to speak to him. Ted picked up the transcription. He read it. He set his pen down and moved it an inch away from the envelope, and I watched a lawyer recalculate his whole afternoon. "That video is out of context," Grant said. His voice had lost the warmth. Even if I said something like that, it was a joke. It was... "Then let's talk about the pills," I said. I laid down Rose's printout. "This is my prescription history from Delgado's pharmacy. In April, someone altered my file. My actual medication was replaced on the record with a heavy sedative hypnotic, a drug that, in a woman my age, produces symptoms indistinguishable from dementia. Confusion, memory loss, disorientation. Every single symptom you've all been so worried about." I laid down Rosa's signed statement. "The pharmacist has known me 20 years. She'll testify that for the last 3 months, I did not pick up these medications. A young woman with dark hair did. A young woman who didn't know my birthday and had it written on her hand." I looked at Nora, whose hands had come up over her mouth. "The pharmacy has 90 days of security footage. It shows her face." "This is insane," Grant said, but the word landed wrong, and everyone in the room heard it land wrong, because he had spent 6 months telling us who was insane, and the wallpaper had just peeled off the lie. "The young woman," I said, "is Sylvie Cross, your assistant. Your mistress. I laid down the text screenshots, printed large. These are her messages with you. Would you like me to read them? Or would you like Ted to? And I read them anyway in the same, even courtroom cadence. Asterisk, did you get the pills?
Yes.
Make sure she takes them. Watch her. She seems really out of it. That's the point, sweetheart. And the last one. Hans says if we get 2 more months of episodes documented plus the family statements, the evals airtight.
Keep her foggy.
Almost there, asterisk. Dr. Hans stood up so fast his folder slid to the floor and fanned out across the rug. I want to be clear, he said, to no one, to the room, to a future courtroom, that I performed no formal examination. This was a preliminary courtesy only. I relied entirely on information provided by Mr. Marsh, and if that information was false, then I withdraw the assessment entirely. I withdraw it. He was gathering his papers off the floor with both hands. He had come to sell a diagnosis, and he was leaving with a suspended license he could already feel coming. And then Peter opened his folio and, in his flat old investigator's voice, laid down the email. Dr. Hans, before you go, this is your reply to Mr. Marsh's request for a preliminary assessment, written before you'd ever met my sister. Your words. We can make that work. Hans sat back down. He had no legs left. I turned last to my daughter. Nora, I said, and my courtroom voice finally cracked. Just a little, because she was not a witness. She was my child. I know you were scared. I know your father told you I was sick. I know you filmed me. I don't blame you for any of it. But baby, I need you to tell everyone what you told Sylvie. Nora was crying, had been crying silently for a while. She stood. She reached into her purse with a shaking hand and she took out an amber prescription bottle. The real one. The one that had lived in our medicine cabinet. The fill that matched the altered record. And she set it on the coffee table beside all the rest of it. And she said, in a small wrecked voice, I took this 3 weeks ago. Something felt wrong. Dad kept telling me you were losing it, but you'd look at me sometimes and you were there, Mom. You were completely there, and then 5 minutes later you'd be gone, and medicine doesn't work like that, grief doesn't work like that, and I got scared it was him. She turned to her father, and I have never heard a young person's voice hold so much. I didn't want it to be you. I kept it because I didn't know what else to do, and I couldn't say it out loud because if I was wrong it would break everything, and if I was right it would break everything worse. She looked back at me, and the words came apart.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Mom.
I helped him. I filmed you for him. I'm so sorry. I got out of the sick woman's chair, and I crossed the room, and I held my daughter while she shook, and over her shoulder I looked at my husband of 25 years, standing by the fire he'd built, in the room where the banner had hung, with his mistress's texts and his bought doctor's email and the pharmacist's statement and 2 experts' reading of his own lips spread across the coffee table between us. And I watched the exact moment Grant Marsh understood that he had lost. It was not dramatic. His shoulders came down. His face, the handsome false face, simply went slack, the way a set goes slack when the play is over and they strike it, and what was left was a smaller, older, frightened man who had gambled a marriage and a woman's mind on the belief that she would never see him clearly, and had forgotten that seeing clearly was the one thing I had never in my life failed to do. Peter had already stepped into the kitchen. I heard him, low and unhurried, on the phone.
Yeah.
I've got a case of elder fraud, conspiracy, and administering a controlled substance to induce incapacity. I've got documentary evidence, a pharmacist willing to testify, and 2 witnesses. How soon can you send someone? Ted the attorney was putting the conservatorship papers back into his briefcase very quickly and saying, I want it on the record that I was retained for estate planning and had no knowledge of any of this, and edging toward the door, which is what attorneys do. Dr. Hans had already gone. I heard his car start in the drive. And Grant said my name once, Delia, in a voice trying to find its way back to the warm register and finding the door locked, and I said, Don't. Just that. He didn't try again. Sylvie ran, of course. When the detective's questions started reaching her that evening, she got in her car and drove, and she made it as far as her sister's place 2 states over before she understood there was nowhere to drive to, because I already had her texts and Rosa already had her face on tape, and running only ever makes you look guilty. Her lawyer got the message across quickly. Cooperate, or be the one left holding it. She took a plea. She testified to everything. The pills, the pickups, Grant's instructions, the plan for the file to be thick enough by Christmas. She got a suspended sentence and probation and community service, and I did not fight it because she had, in the end, come to my kitchen when running would have been safer for her, and I have decided that a person who does one right thing out of fear should be allowed to keep the door open for having done it. That's not forgiveness. I don't owe her that. It's just that I've spent my life reading how much fear can twist a face, and hers was real. Grant was arrested 3 days later. The charges, when they finally settled, were serious: fraud, conspiracy, and a felony count for the drugs, for slipping a woman a sedative for months to fake her decline and rob her. His attorney tried, early on, the only defense left to him, which was almost funny. He argued the video should be excluded because lip reading is unreliable. And the prosecutor, a sharp woman who reminded me of myself, simply pointed out that even without 1 second of the video, there was an altered pharmacy record, a bought doctor's email, a mistress's confession, a daughter's preserved evidence, and a bottle of pills. The lip reading, she said, wasn't the case. It was just how the victim happened to catch him first. Grant took a plea rather than let all of that be read to a jury.
He is serving his time now.
I did not go to the sentencing. I felt, already watched him understand what he'd done in my own living room, and I didn't need to watch it twice. Dr. Hans lost his license. Permanently this time. The board did not reinstate a man who wrote a diagnosis of impairment for a woman he'd never examined, for a fee, at a husband's request. That felt, of everything, the most important to me, more than Grant even, because Grant only wanted to hurt one woman, and a doctor who will write anything for a fee will hurt 100 you'll never hear about. The court protected the estate. Every acre of my father's farm, every dollar of what he'd worked 79 years to build and had trusted to me, stayed mine, whole and clean. Grant never touched a cent of it, and never will. I filed for divorce the week after his arrest, and it was not contested, because there was nothing left for him to contest with. I kept the house. I kept the farm. I kept my name, which is Marsh, which was also my father's, and which I decided I was keeping for him and not for the man I'd married.
Nora moved home for a while.
She needed to, and so did I. We spent that winter in the house together, and it was hard because guilt is its own kind of illness, and my daughter had a bad case, and I had to tell her more than once that she was a child who'd been lied to by a father she trusted, and that suspecting the truth and taking that bottle when she was terrified and alone was not a betrayal of me, but the thing that helped save me. She believes it more days than she doesn't now. She's back in her own place, in her own life, but she calls me every Sunday, and every Sunday she can hear in my voice over the phone that I am completely, entirely there, and I think that sound has done more to heal her than anything I could say. I went back to work in the spring, back to the courtrooms, back to the silent tapes, back to the impossible, ordinary job of telling a jury what a mouth said when there was no sound to prove it. The first time I walked back into that courthouse, the bailiff who'd known me for years said, "Good to have you back, Ms. Marsh," and I realized I'd been afraid, some small part of me, that Grant's story had followed me here, that people would look at me and see the fragile, confused woman he'd invented. But that woman never existed. She was a character in a play he wrote to rob me, and the play closed on opening night, in my own living room, when I stood up out of the sick woman's chair. People ask me, sometimes, when they hear the story, whether I saw it coming 25 years, a whole life, how could I not know the man beside me? And I tell them the truth, which is that I didn't know, not until that party, not until his own mouth told on him from across a crowded room. A face can lie. Grant's did, for months, beautifully, to 60 people at once. A voice can lie. His was the most loving thing in any room he entered. But I have spent my whole life learning that a mouth trying to hide something and a mouth telling the truth do not move the same way, and that the eyes of a person who has learned to watch will catch the difference every time. He toasted my fragility in front of everyone we knew, and then he turned to the girl and told the truth, believing no one could hear it. He forgot that hearing was never how I understood the world. He forgot I read lips. And I've thought a great deal since about what it all comes down to: the 6 months, the pills, the courtroom I made out of my own front room. It comes down to this. A mouth can say anything. Men build whole lives, whole marriages, whole quiet crimes on the belief that the words coming out of them are the only record that exists. But there's another record. It's in the way the face moves when it thinks it's alone. It's in what people say when they're sure you can't hear. And a person who has learned to truly see, not the story someone's telling, but the truth their body can't help but tell alongside it, that person can't be robbed of her own mind, because her mind was never the frail thing she was told it was. It was the strongest thing in the room the whole time. I kept the crystal glasses, in the end, the thin ones that sing. I don't drink champagne out of them anymore, but every so often I run a wet finger around the rim of one just to hear it, that clear high note in an empty house that's finally, entirely mine. My father's farm is out the window. My daughter calls on Sundays. And Monday morning I go back to court, where I sit very still and I watch and I tell the people who need to know exactly what was said in the silence, because a mouth can lie to anyone but not to eyes that have learned how to look, and not, I promise you, ever again to mine.